us, what is network marketing?
Network marketing is a fancy name for marketing a product to society. It's the idea of taking a product and then marketing it to the general public. The difference with network marketing is structure. And it's a very unique structure that allows you as an individual to scale to larger and larger and larger sizes without having the need for infrastructure, without having the need for huge amounts of capital. And that's really the sizzle and the sexiness of network marketing.
What does network marketing look like today in the age of social media and the internet?
Well, interestingly enough, in the social media, you have the term influencer, which is an individual that has got very popular on the internet, and they use their voice to communicate and attract attention. They'll promote or they'll engage in conversations about specific ideas and products and technologies of which the followers will then gravitate to, purchase, et cetera, et cetera. Network marketing is a way to communicate to a given or defined public that you want to attract attention to by offering them one of two things. One, your products, or two, your opportunity to join you in business. I prefer the latter because that's really how it works.
What were some of the telltale signs that they had the right personality, the right attitude, the right work ethic, and they had what it takes to succeed?
The first was their ability to communicate and their willingness to learn.
So yeah, we tend to oversimplify these stories, but you're absolutely right. It's a long path. It's a long, complicated story. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It takes time and patience. And
now I'm going to address, sometimes some people have all the resources all lined up and they go lickety split and it happens overnight, but that's not going to be the same for everybody all the time. And it's a matter of understanding how to use those resources and what are the activities that are geared to create the results that you want. What's the structure look like? And again, the key to network marketing is structure.
this is the Money Seed Podcast, where we discuss all things investing, plain and simple, the way it should be. Please remember, this show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to be investment advice. Welcome back to the Money Seed Podcast. My guest today is Dave Rolfe. Dave is a network marketing expert. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Gabe. A pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Dave, it's an honor to have you. You are definitely known as one of the foremost experts on network marketing. You've helped scale various businesses to reach over $1 billion in sales. You've been in this industry now for decades. Let's start at the beginning. Maybe tell us, what is network marketing and how did you get the bug and how did you get started?
Well, interesting question, Gabe. And really, network marketing is a fancy name for marketing a product to society. It's no different than Ford Motor Company or Remax Real Estate or General Motors or Amazon. It's the idea of taking a product and then marketing it to the general public. The difference with network marketing is structure. And it's a very unique structure that allows you as an individual to scale to larger and larger and larger sizes without having the need for infrastructure, without having the need for huge amounts of capital. And that's really the sizzle and the sexiness of network marketing.
So on that definition, what is a really good example of network marketing today? I mean, we can talk about maybe Amway in the, maybe a few decades ago, that was one model, but what does network marketing look like today in the age of social media and the internet?
Well, interestingly enough, in the social media, you have the term influencer, which is an individual that has got very popular on the internet, and they use their voice to communicate and attract attention. And when they do that, they'll promote or they'll engage in conversations about specific ideas and products and technologies of which the followers will then gravitate to, purchase, et cetera, et cetera. That's marketing. That's marketing 101. If you look at the drug companies per se, not saying that I like them or don't, but they'll advertise on TV their product, and the people that are watching will gravitate to those ads and purchase their product. So network marketing is a way to communicate to a given or defined public that you want to attract attention to by offering them one of two things. One, your products, or two, your opportunity to join you in business. I prefer the latter because that's really how it works, but it's like anything else. And in today's society, and to add on to this, Gabe, the 38% of the population's in doing some kind of a side hustle. So we know that the economy needs ways and avenues to earn extra money. I listened to one of your earlier podcasts, and it's very enlightening that that person developed a niche. And that niche allowed that person to do really well and develop it. And the interesting part is what she was doing had been done for centuries. She didn't have to reinvent any wheels. She just had to take a look at what was going on in society today and how do you take what you want to do and fit it into that model. And I'll explain more as we go down through this podcast.
So how did you get started in this business? I mean, it sounds like you've been in this for almost 5 decades. How did you first get the bug?
I was a budding entrepreneur. I was living in Canada. And at that time, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have smartphones, but we had these tabloid magazines that had a huge classified section of opportunities. You know, become a roofer, do asphalting, do carpentry, whatever the case may be. I wasn't a very good student in school, and I didn't master anything there. I learned to drive a truck. That was one of the side things. But I had a little bit of a gift of gab, so I could communicate. I could talk. I didn't mind doing that. I wasn't polished in those days, but I was looking for a way to find something to do that fit who I was. And I found this product in California. It was called Nature's Nougats, and it was a health food bar. And at that time, and this was in the 70s, health food stores were just emerging as a new market. So I ordered the product from California, shipped it up to Canada, and then went around to all the health food stores to get them to take it, et cetera, et cetera. And I was in a store that wasn't a health food store, but it was just I didn't know what kind of store it was. And I thought, well, I'm going to see if they want some product on their counter to make some extra cash. And I go in, and a lady's behind the counter, and I tell my story. And then out from behind a beaded doorway, we're dating this guy emerges out. And he says, "Man, Dave, that was the best conversation and presentation I've ever heard." And I'm totally flattered. And I said, "Whoa," internally. And then he says, "Is that all the products that you sell?" And I said, "Yes." And then he asked this question: "How would you like to sell hundreds of products?" Well, my mind internally just went, ka-chink, ka-chink, ka-chink. It was the casino. It was like, oh my goodness, of course I would love to do that. That's what I've been looking for. And I go to this meeting, and I'm the only person in the audience. And it was at a school, there was an auditorium, and I'm sitting in the audience, and this guy up at the top, his name was Jim Jantz, and he's describing what this business is. And of course, it was foreign to me, but he said this one statement that I've used for the past 40 years. "How would you like to own a Coca-Cola machine on every corner of every street, and every time somebody bought a Coke, you made a nickel?" Well, I have to tell you, Gabe, I just sat back in my chair and went, whoa. I couldn't believe what I heard. And the imagination went nuts. All I could see was Coca-Cola machine. Well, that concept stuck with me. And then, of course, the company was called Amway. I only lasted a couple of years in Amway because I was too young. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't get the right training. There were a whole host of issues, but the concept remained. I used it in business. I used it to develop my own businesses. The same thing applied. It's just you establish a situation that generates capital, and then you move on and you establish it again, and then you keep establishing these specific units. In our business, network marketing, that's with people. Now, the strange thing about network marketing, and it was a lack of education, in my opinion. That's the downfall for most, because they don't understand how it works, where to work, why to do it. And it would be like taking an untrained person and sticking them as the CEO of Ford Motor Company and say, okay, make this work. And they'd be lost. And so it took me a number of years to figure it out. And it took me the right mentoring, getting the right understanding. And finally it clicked for me after about 13 years of trial and error, 1990. And then I soared to the top of a company and I've been there ever since. So it was a fabulous ride, but that's how I got started. That's where it ended up. But there was a huge learning curve that took place. Well, today, that's much shorter for everybody because the path is well known and well understood. But you've got to push through the considerations and the false information out there that seems to preclude most people from actually looking. But as a viable source of income, this is one of the best low-cost ways I know of how to make a fortune.
So I got to ask you some follow-up questions on your story. So at the beginning, I love that story. It sounds like you find a product in the back of a magazine, you order a whole bunch, right? So basically you're up in Winnipeg, Canada. You get a bunch of these nougat bars from California and you start going around stores in Winnipeg saying, hey, I'm selling these bars. Do you want to sell it in your store? Is that what happened?
That pretty much, but I was in Vancouver at that time. I'd moved to the West Coast and moved back, but that's exactly right.
So Dave, I got to ask you this. What kind of a risk or financial risk did you take? I mean, did you just buy these or did you establish some kind of a bulk discount with the company in California that was selling it? I mean, how did you get into it and what kind of a financial risk did you take to get this started? I mean, I love the story.
Well, this was an interesting thing. Now, these were health food bars with no preservatives in them. So there were some real nasty events that happened after that because sometimes they got delayed in shipping through customs. And then by the time they got to me, they were already growing things inside of them that they shouldn't have because there was no preservatives. So you would buy case lots. And so I did a little research to find the number of stores, and I did a little research and find, well, what would people buy? And I started to buy inventory, a small amount, sell that out, reorder, small amount, reorder, et cetera, et cetera. And it was for lack of another way to explain this, I was totally uneducated. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I felt that this would be a good start to learn. But once that was over, I mean, the problems with it were really huge problems. And one was, how do you keep that product so it doesn't decontaminate, so it doesn't create worms, so it doesn't so it lasts because it needs to be refrigerated. So I didn't know that. I wasn't educated on. I bought some product, brought it up here, sold it, and it tasted great. So I really like how it tasted. And then I ran into Roy, and he turned me on to Amway, and that just led into a different career.
So about Amway, we got to bring up that topic because I feel like a lot of people in the 80s and 90s got involved with Amway in some way, shape, or form. A relative asked them, a friend chatted them up at a Christmas dinner, etc. And it seems like everyone was either in Amway or knew someone in Amway. What were your experiences with Amway and what were some of the takeaways from there?
Well, it's the difference of looking at it for what it is or what the experience was. So what I was looking at it was a ticket out. And the ticket out meant it was an opportunity to make a great income because the hierarchy of that company was doing extremely well. And I wasn't looking at the emotional challenges and problems. But in hindsight, what really happened was the American way was promoted to everybody, but it wasn't for everybody. And so the wrong people got in. It would be like what you do as a podcaster and a host. Not everybody can do what you do. But if you try to force somebody, okay, here you're going to do a podcast this Saturday and you've never done one before and you got to stand up on stage, which did happen to me with the regards to doing a meeting, that becomes stressful. And those stresses weigh on people and create negatives that the next time it happens, they kind of, I don't know if I want to do that. And of course, now, you don't make money overnight. I mean, most businesses take 3 to 5 years to create a profit line. Yes, can be cash flow, but again, it's understanding, well, where is the cash flow? Where is the make-break point? What are the true numbers? What does have to occur becomes the information that then you can think and predict and evaluate and understand the direction that you want to take. I mean, it's a simple science. But here's how it works. So I go to you, Gabe, do you want to make an extra $5,000 or $10,000 a month? And you say, yeah, I do. Okay. Yeah. Well, what do I do? Well, sign up with me and this is what we're going to do. And if you need any help, give me a call. End of conversation. Now, you may go to a couple of rah-rah meetings. You may get on a couple of podcasts. You may get on a couple of meetings on Zoom. And, oh, yeah, these guys are great. They're inspiring. But still, I want you to build a kitchen for me, and you're not a carpenter. How do you do that? You see, so the missing link for what I finally came to understand was the first step is education. And I'll give you another story because I think it makes sense. When I was younger in Winnipeg, I played Little League Baseball. And I was a tall, gangly guy. I wasn't athletically inclined, but my parents got me into every sport you could think of. And I was playing baseball and I'd be standing at the batter box and that ball would come by me at, 80, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour and boom, and I'd go, well, then I would swing, But I played with a guy. His name was Butch Goring. And Butch Goring became a Major League Baseball player. Now, here's the message. He had the aptitude to play baseball. And people saw that he had it was a natural. And so he could swing, he could hit, he could catch, he could run, he could do it all with ease. And so he then accelerated because people saw that he had the aptitude. They grabbed onto him and encouraged, educated, motivated, and moved him up the ranks. And he finally goes into the Major League. Well, the same thing applies here with network marketing. A lot of people get inspired to want to, but they don't really have the aptitude of what it's really required. And this isn't for everybody. If it were, then we'd be done. Everybody would. But in a sense, Gabe, everybody is a network marketer. It's how you define what it is. As I said, I listened to earlier when we were talking to your last podcast, and what this gal did was she was in the area of short-term rentals. She found one, got it going, saved up another amount of money, got a second one, did the same thing, and kept repeating that process over and over again. Well, that's what I did. I found one person that really wanted to make some extra money. We got together, and then we made him viable. Once that was viable, then I had a story. I went to the next guy and said, well, I just did this with this guy. We can do the same thing with you. And we did. And then suddenly it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew.
So I got to ask you, when you were working with these individuals, what were some of the telltale signs that they had the right personality, the right attitude, the right work ethic, and they had what it takes to succeed?
The first was their ability to communicate and their willingness to learn. So again, it's kind of, now, necessity is the mother of invention. So all of them had a necessity. The key was, the first guy he was a good sales guy. So he was motivated. He knew how to communicate, and he had necessity. He needed to make income. So he understood that relationship of work creates income. And again, you might hear this too, Gabe. People say, well, we don't want to trade time for money. Well, anything you do is trading your time to generate money. Whether you're your own business, whether you're working for somebody else, it's the answer there is the definition of what is it that you're doing? And is there a window where you can kind of jump off? So I'll give you a window. So I built the business in the last business. The company was called Niken. It's a Japanese company. It dealt with magnetic health products, and it started in 1989 in the United States. It started actually in Japan in 1975. And I worked it from 1990 till 1999, went from the bottom to the top, became the 5th largest distributor in their company and the first major leader in California, built up an army of 30,000 in distributors and had probably close to 4,000 what I would call leaders, and was generating a huge amount of income. It was huge. So I retired early, and I retired from the sense of actively building to a position of managing from afar, did other things, started several other businesses, diversified the usual lessons that you get. And because I had this residual operation that allowed me to do that, it took off 20 years. Now, That's the difference that this business can create.
You mean you were able to retire 20 years earlier than otherwise? Is that what you mean by 20?
Yeah, so I was able to step aside from, having the day to day, oh, got to go to work, got to get in the car, got to drive on the freeway, got to do this, got to go to this meeting, to a point of, well, there's a meeting coming up. Do I want to do that, or do I want to go golfing, or am I going to go to France, or what am I going to do? So it gave me the choice. Now, it also gave me the choice to go take my kids to school every day, to pick them up every day, to go to my daughter's, she was a cheerleader, to make sure I was at all her events, to deal with my son and all his stuff. And, that it gave me that ability. It also gave me ability to hone other skills and do other projects and work on me. And whereas if I was working a job or something, if I had a restaurant or if I had a brick and mortar business, I may not have that same freedom. So what really is important for people, if they're looking at side hustles or things to do, kick the tires, check it out. I'm going to give you some avenues to do that. And here's what I'm looking for in doing these is I'm looking for somebody that's serious. You want to make some serious money? Well, let's hook up. I'll talk. I'll show you everything you need to know. Everything. And here's why. Your success is my continued success. If you don't make it or don't do anything, that's a complete waste of time, both for you and for me. So the shoe has to fit. The qualifications have to be there. It's not like it just, oh, well, wham, bam, thank you, man. Oh, come and join me, because people do that. And they waste energy, they waste time. But more importantly, what they do is they taint the actual validity of what this is because they didn't do it the way it should have been done. And this is no different than going to work for Price Waterhouse or the top legal firm in the country, or being an executive with Ford Motor Company. You got a job to do and you learn how to do it, and then you go do it and you produce the product that you're supposed to produce, period. Anything else of that is not how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, and a few minutes ago, you mentioned this idea that people trade time for their money, and we kind of always are trading our time for money in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like there's this big leap between people who have a regular day job, and it's almost like a linear relationship between the time and the money. So I know that if I spend 10 hours on a Monday, I'm going to get paid for 10 hours worth of work on the Friday when I get my paycheck. And so there's this linear relationship. And when you mentioned that earlier discussion about how, oh, just work with me and you'll make, 5,000 or 10,000 extra bucks a month, whatever. What people don't realize is that it's not a linear relationship. You might be putting in, 10 hours on a Monday for weeks and months, maybe years before that money comes in. That money is not coming in on that Friday. You do need time, right? We have this myth of the overnight success, and there is no overnight success. You got to put in, whether it's elbow grease, or you got to learn, or you got to do a whole bunch of stuff before you are rewarded for that effort you put in. And I think that link is often not understood.
Yeah, exactly, Gabe. And that's it. One of the big things is having a picture and a complete conceptual understanding of what it is that you're doing. So let's say, for example, you want to buy a house. And you've got a piece of ground, you want to build a house, and you got this idea, you've seen houses, you drive by them. Oh, I like that one. That looks good. I like that one. And then, so what do? You go to an architect, and the architect draws you out a plan. And the plan is that, maybe it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, family room, all of these kind of bells and whistles. And you look at it, he shows you pictures, and you say, yeah, this is it. Okay, that's good. Now what's the next step? He creates plans to build it step by step. But what do you have as the conception, the end? You understand what it looks like. You understand what it's made up of. And then he gives you a step by step. What do you have to do to create it? And then in that time frame, you get an understanding of what it takes to get the prize. Time is a consideration for most. It's some days are busy, some days aren't. Some days go by like a rocket ship. Some they take an eternity to get there. So it's a matter of doing. So if you understand the relationship of doing to getting a result, then it's easy to create the results that you want within the time frame that you want to get that time frame. But you got to understand, how does it work? Number one. And then you got to understand, what is it that you want? from doing this activity, whatever the activity is. You want to start a business, you want to do podcasting, you want to be a sales rep, you want to work for, you still have to understand that stuff. Can't get away from that.
And even that example, which I think is a great example with the architect, that is still somewhat of a linear path between, the architect has step one, step two, and you can see all the steps ahead of you. Quite often in business, it's never linear. It's always some roundabout way, right? Like, I mean, just looking at your story, you started out with these nougat bars in Vancouver and you learned a bunch of stuff. And then you went to Amway, you learned a bunch of stuff. And eventually all the sort of dots connected in this weird roundabout way. And then you achieve success. And that's very similar to most other success stories, is people have 2 or 3 starts and they have all these disconnected experiences that all kind of come together at some point, and it all starts making sense.
Yeah, and one of the issues there too with the industry, and it's like the same thing. Well, okay, so you got a guy by the name of Mark Cuban, became a billionaire. What did he do? How did he get there? How long did it take? What did he study? What did he learn? Who did he know? What were his connections? And then if you put all that together, then his story makes 100% sense. So it's the same thing here, is people get enamored with success, but they don't get the supporting how-to to follow.
And quite often the how-to is way oversimplified. It's like saying, how did Elon Musk get successful? Oh, we just started an electric car company. What could be easier than starting an electric car company? It's like, no, it's actually, there's a lot more happening there. And so, yeah, we tend to oversimplify these stories, but you're absolutely right. It's a long path. It's a long, complicated story. There's no such thing as an overnight success. It takes time and patience. And
now I'm going to address, sometimes some people have all the resources all lined up and they go lickety-split and it happens overnight, but that's not going to be the same for everybody all the time. And there are 3 resources in our business: time, people, and money. And it's a matter of understanding how to use those resources and what are the activities that are geared to create the results that you want. What's the structure look like? And again, the key to network marketing is structure. Because in our pay plan, we get paid up to 6 generations below us compressed. So if somebody doesn't, then the next one pops up. If somebody doesn't, it pops up. So that can create the idea of leverage. And the idea of leverage is, like, I was looking at it listening to Avery's podcast. She had to do one at a time. So in our business, let's say, again, I recruit you. Now you go out and you start talking to other people. While you're doing that, I'm doing it too. So all of a sudden I've doubled my capacity. Now you bring on 2 people. Now there's 4 of us. I've quadrupled my capacity. Now just keep playing that game and you get to see how that can potentially grow, which then changes the perception of the willingness to do what's necessary. So yeah, it might take you 6 months to get there. It might take you a year to get there, whatever. But in the end, once the army is there, then, the rest is history. So you have to, but if you didn't understand that, then the runway is tough. But if you understood what the value of your effort and work is done today means tomorrow, whole different story. And it'd be kind of like, I've been at the right place at the right time with Google, with Amway, with, Apple, with Microsoft, the ability to buy those stocks at the lowest price, and look where they are today. Hindsight's the perfect science. So it's the same concept. You're there. Just look at what you could have done if you had invested in Apple today when it first came out. You wouldn't have to work another day in your life. And so what really happens is people preclude themselves from looking because they have a consideration. They think they know and understand what it is. And for anything, please, the more you look and the more you understand, the easier it is to evaluate and make decisions. It may not be for you, but if you're looking for a way to generate some extra capital, or create a career, or create freedom, or help people, or whatever your purposes are, this can be an ideal way to go.
amazing. Dave, tell us about your website. Where can people reach you, and some of the ebooks that are available on your site?
Well, I've written 2 books. The first one is Vested Interest, which I wrote in 1999. It's now an ebook. And then the second book that I wrote is The Smart Networker, and I wrote that in 2000 and a 3 years ago. And the way to get to me is go to besmarterwithdave.com. And on that, you're going to get a couple of freebies, and then you're going to hook up with me. And I don't mind giving away my book, no problem. I'm not going to charge you for the book. That's easy. But really, you got to contact me to get the book. And then we can have a conversation to see if this is an avenue that's even worth you taking a look at. Because a lot of people it's not, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. And I am looking for a couple of serious people that really want to get down to the nitty gritty.
Sounds good.
besmarterwithdave.com.
Sounds good. We'll put all those links into the show notes. Dave, thanks very much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Gabe. Pleasure.
Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Money Seed Podcast. Please remember to click like and subscribe. It really helps spread the message to other investors, and it helps attract new viewers to the show. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much.